Yeah, I mean, on that, obviously this is a broad question, so take it in whichever way you feel is best. I mean, there were local elections recently that did not go the way of the ANC. You saw some small gains, if I'm correct, for like EFF, and there's movement, but how would you sort of categorize the way that these political shifts are going in the country, right? Because I think that for people in the U.S., particularly like leftists in the U.S., like I don't think there is enough of like a realization of like how much kind of like neoliberal policy unfortunately was like implemented by ANC in power, right? Not always by their own conditions of their own choosing, but nonetheless. And it's still a country that has mass amounts of inequality, and there's a lot of frustration. So I mean, like, it's 2021, we're coming out of we're still in a pandemic, sorry, like we're still in this massive pandemic. The ANC sort of was struggling in the most recent elections, and you're starting to see these different formations come about. I mean, how would you sort of categorize the struggle right now?
I think it's, South Africa's kind of been in the middle of this process where we are seeing the fracture of the National Liberation Project. Mm-hmm. So the ANC, which was once the hegemonic political force in South Africa, sort of embodied people's aspirations for an egalitarian future. I think ever since the 2008 financial crisis, ever since the presidency of Jacob Zuma in 2009, and the way in which the ANC came undone by widespread political patronage and corruption and its factional battles and the tripartite alliance, which it's a part of with the South African Communist Party and the Congress of South African Trade Unions coming undone, with one of the biggest trade unions in COSATU leaving, the Marikana massacre, fees must fall, so on and so forth. There's just been this protracted period in which the ANC has lost political legitimacy. But having said that, there still hasn't been any serious challenges. So the economic freedom fighters, which you mentioned, I think one thing that's interesting about being South Africa is that from afar, a lot of people think of the EFF as being the sort of left party in South Africa. But in many ways, it's kind of just a faction of the ANC, still very much buys into the ANC's political project of wanting to kind of establish a patriotic black bourgeoisie, indigenize South African capitalism, and use that as a vehicle to sort of redistribute wealth somehow, and has started to sort of kind of parrot right-wing talking points, anti-immigrant sentiment, so on and so forth. And so a lot of these, new entrants into the scene, while the EFF being the primary one, is kind of downstream of the ANC. So in these elections, it's plateaued. It can't break above a certain ceiling because I think a lot of people just sort of don't see it as a serious challenge to the ANC. The Democratic Alliance, which has been South Africa's official opposition since 1998, is this political party that presents a kind of classical liberal outlook, and once upon a time tried to transform the leadership of its party, having had this history of being white dominated, to having a lot more black leaders. But then after many political spats and the ostracization of some key black leaders, has kind of doubled down and embraced an identity as being this minoritarian, Republican-styled party in South Africa, and no one finds them appealing anymore. So the political landscape at the moment, and what these local government elections illustrated, is that the viable political projects are coming from unpredictable directions. So there's been political parties like this new group called Action SA, which is actually led by a former member of the Democratic Alliance called Herman Mashaba, who was the mayor of Johannesburg, which is the economic hub of South Africa. It's where I live. And he sort of styled himself as a kind of Rudy Giuliani figure, going to clean the streets of foreigners and stuff like that, and then got kicked out of the DA, started his own party, and it's kind of like a five-star movement styled civic populist front, and that's where a lot of the energy is, the sort of like an emerging sort of black kind of right-wing current in South Africa. That's where a lot of the energy is going, and the left in South Africa, I think, is still trying to find its identity outside of the Communist Party, outside of COSATU, outside of the failed NUMSA moment when NUMSA left COSATU and tried to start in a very haphazard fashion its own workers' party 2 months before the 2019 general elections. So the South African left is still in this kind of moribund wilderness where it's trying to figure out what to do, how to contest power, and how to do it seriously.
Yeah, that sounds very interesting. Anything else before we let you go? William Shoki, Africa is a Country. Where will you direct people? The Shoki Spear on Twitter, and I know you guys do put great conversations on YouTube as well as a podcast.
Yeah, so do check out africasacountry.com to see all of our content and critical analysis and commentary on the continent. We run a podcast called AIAC Talk, which I host. Find that on your favorite streaming platform. And we're also in partnership with a bunch of cool publications on the continent, such as Amandla magazine, which is this progressive magazine that everyone should check out if they want to find specific information about South Africa and what's happening here. Check out the Matare Social Justice Center, which is based in Kenya, if you want to get specific information about what's going on there. And yeah, I think that's it.
Well, thanks a lot, and I appreciate you staying up, but we allow you to go to bed if you want to.
No, thanks so much, guys. The stuff keeps me up at night, so it's nice to have a chance to talk about
somebody to talk to. Well, we're always around for you whenever you want, friend.
Appreciate it.
We'll talk
Thanks
to you
so
soon.
much.
See you.
Cheers.
That was wonderful. People really should check out Africa as a Country. Not only the political and historical writing's really great, they do a lot of great coverage of sport and culture, which I think is phenomenal. And the podcast is a must listen. It's actually
absolutely
really, really
essential.
good.